Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face Off XL, where we have reached the end of 1992, and to see out the year we have 6 magazines to check out. Amiga Power, Amiga Format, CU Amiga, Amiga Action, the one for Amiga, and as an extra present we have Amiga Mania. Fight! Let's start out with Amiga Mania first, as it was a short-lived magazine that provided a full free game every month, even if those games might have been closer to PD. But they didn't seem to have much faith in those games, as they didn't even give out proper labels for them. And this month's game is the Hell Run Machine. That starts off with a bit of an odd tune and a weird title screen. Something that pretty much continues into the game.
You better get ready.
We are playing as that fish thing in the middle of the screen, that can move at a number of set speeds by moving it up through its gears, with our goal being to fly over the glowing squares to turn them off. And the number that you still need to get is indicated on the HUD. And you need to do all that while managing to avoid the various enemies, walls, and not running out of time. And then you get to head down the exit where... Did we finish the level or die? No, we finished the level. This is a bit like Snake, but you don't grow longer. And the levels have far more interesting designs. It also has this thing that if you try to go over the squares that you've already turned off, then it will after a while kill you. I'm really not sure what to make of this one, as clearly they put a lot of effort in. But it's also a bit basic. I'm not sure if they came up with the idea and then slapped the weird aesthetic on it, or if they came up with that first and then tried to come up with a game idea. Either way, it's not a bad game, but it's not a great one either. At least to me. So maybe that blank looking disc label might have been useful after all. Moving on, we have Amiga Action, that had 2 discs, 3 demos, as well as a PD title. And we start with Alien Breed 92 Special Edition. Now this really could have been seen as a sequel to Alien Breed, as it has double the number of levels over the original, and they even changed up or replaced most of the ones from the original as well. It's a very weird idea from Team 17, but at its core it's still the same top-down run-and-gun action that the series was known for. The demo is a special cut-down and reworked version of the 7th map, and it even lets you try it out in multiplayer mode, which would have been handy seeing how difficult this game can get. But for this demo, it's actually not too bad. Although you still will have to be careful with the keys, or you'll have to find enough cash so you can buy some more.
Warning. Destruction imminent.
But before you know it, you've triggered the deck explosives and you'll have to rush to the exit lift. This is a nice demo for an interesting update to the game, and definitely one that I would have enjoyed playing back in the day. The second demo is for Nick Faldo's Golf, which, surprise surprise, is a golf game. That does look nice enough. And it seems detailed enough that you can change your view or even your stance. The club selection seems easy. You just move the mouse to the side of the screen and there they are. Just a shame they don't give you any information about them, like how far they'll hit the ball. Even a rough number would have been fine, but I guess this was aimed at people who actually know golf. The right hand side of the screen gives us our map, as well as showing the lie of the ball. And then we come to actually hitting the ball, which is where the whole thing falls apart. As this isn't that standard 3-tap system that you might know. It's similar, as you tap the mouse to start. You then have to double tap the mouse when the bar reaches that larger second zone. Get it bang on and the ball will go mostly straight, Get it wrong, even a little, and expect a massive slice. Getting the timing right is awful. Absolutely awful. And just to add to all of this, you can try for an extra tap in that early zone to get a bonus strength. Now, I've played the odd golf game, and I've even enjoyed a few of them. This one though, I did not. It's a weird mix of doing some things nicely and other things very badly. This demo just put me off it completely. Action's only PD is Donkey Kong, a game that felt that they didn't need that whole legally distinct thing. What they did need though was a Cracktro style intro. The basic game itself looks and sounds more or less how I remember the arcade game looking, even if it is obviously a bit wider than taller. We have the hammers and the normal barrels that you have to avoid, with the goal being, as always, to make it to the top of the screen, at least on this level anyway. Now, I couldn't tell you if this has all the screens of the game, as I could never get past the second stage. Not sure if it's been made harder than the original, or if I'm really just bad at it. Or it's a combination of the both. But if you wanted a decent version of Donkey Kong on the Amiga, then I don't think you could go too far wrong with this one. The final demo is for Cytron, a game that we've seen in the Amiga Answer To video a while back, but this is the first time we've seen the demo. And this is an interesting little shooter. Because at first it feels simple enough. You move your tank around, you can shoot at baddies, you can collect the humans. There's enemy generators that you'll want to take out, and there's switches that you can trigger by shooting them. But then you'll find that there's transporters that will take you to other parts of the level, where at first you think you're stuck, but then you hit the spacebar, and then your tank splits into two smaller parts, each of which is small enough to get through the gap. And this is one of the game's big party pieces, as you can now move around and shoot and trigger various things using each tank. You can even switch between them, and then get them back together and reconstitute them. The other big thing that this game does is provide lots of options for its controls, including using a single stick, using two joysticks to get that twin stick feeling, or even mixing it up with joystick and mouse in various combinations. They really put a lot of effort into this one. And overall, it's an interesting game, and possibly one that I should put some more time into. Amiga Format is up next with 2 discs that they filled with a number of full programs, a program demo, as well as a game demo. And starting with the program demo, we get Wordsworth 2. The legendary word processor, and you get to experience a demo of it. As you might imagine from a demo, it is limited, with it loading up a document for you, showing off a few things that it can do. Like, can you believe that it can read out your documents for you? With what I guess would be Amiga Say, well, if you could if it was in the demo. You can also include some clip art, and they even provide you one to import. But this being a demo, well, you won't be able to save what you're doing, and quite a lot of the features are disabled. If you wanted to actually write a document, then you could use the first full program that they provided, Scribble, or Platinum Scribble, which sounds more like a gentleman's club than a program. This is a more basic text editor than something more fancy like Wordsworth, as you can just start typing away. You can make things bold or italic by applying the style in a bit of a weird way, but I didn't spot any option for changing the font. but it does have a few modes for editing as well as setting the justification. Oh, and you can change the colour of the page and ink. And I thought they were going to get fancy on us with a spell checker as well as a thesaurus. But they didn't include those on the disc, and you'll have to pay an extra £8 to get those. So if you wanted something slightly more advanced than a basic text editor, but not quite as resource intensive as Wordsworth, then this could have been a nice medium. The other programs they provided were virus checkers, one that we've seen before that lets you scan various disks, as well as look for some very specific viruses. But there was also Bootex, a more in-depth looking virus checker that can check your boot blocks on your disks, as that was a common place to put viruses, as it made it easier to spread, as well as doing full checks on your memory and the whole disk. I can't really say how good either of these are, but in this age of GoTex and using emulators with randomly downloaded disks, it might be worth running these against them, so we don't spread those 30-year-old viruses around again. Also included on the disc was more assembly code that Bullfrog had provided for their DevPack 2 tutorials. This was one of the great things about Amiga Format, that the full programs were not a one and done, that they provided guides and tutorials for months after featuring the disc, so they really gave you a lot of great information on how to use them. And finally, we have its only demo, which was for Nigel Mansell's World Championship, a racing game featuring the celeb Nigel Mansell. This is a fast racing game, and while it might have come from Gremlin, it has nothing to do with the Lotus series, even if it does look very similar. Well, there is some advertising that you can see on the track, but it is of the blink and you'll miss it variety. Because when you really start playing this game, you realise it handles quite differently to Lotus, as it's more slippy and far quicker at making its turns. It has a very different handling model, so I think it does feel more like an F1 car, and you'll have to get used to all of these changes, because we'll have to drive around this unique track for the demo, and it has a lot of interesting corners, even a tunnel that you'll have to go through. But it is just 3 laps. But they did decide to include the pits if you think that you weren't far enough behind already. And yes, you'll have to start in last place and try and work your way to the front of the pack. And you can play either with or without the HUD. So overall, it's a decent enough demo, and I think it shows off the game quite well, even if you will finish it off in just like 5 minutes or so. Moving on, and we have Amiga Power, that managed to fit 3 demos onto its single disc. And we start with Bill's Tomato Game, a puzzle game that you have to place various items to get our tomato friend, not called Bill, to the exit on the other side of the screen. In what might be one of the earlier examples of the physics puzzler genre. Even if the number of items that we have to work with is quite limited. But it is quite inventive with its obstacles that you'll have to work around. And some of them you'll have to actually time your runs to make sure that you can finish them. If you recall this game from a video that I've done previously, then you might be a little surprised with the HUD, as the limited number of attempts that's in the final game isn't here. We just get a big go button instead of the traffic lights. And to be honest, I think the game might be better without those limited attempts, as we already have a time system in place. So it's possible it might have annoyed me slightly if I then got the final game and found out that yes, they had changed it and added those attempts. But overall, this is a great demo, as we have multiple levels to try out, and they are across the different worlds of the final game, so you get to see a lot of different graphical styles. The second demo is for Fire and Ice, And not just any old demo, it's an Xmas demo, as we get Cool Coyote wearing a Santa outfit, with what sounds like a rave festive song going on in the background. The level is actually an extended version of one of the secret maps from the full game, with it constantly snowing. But you can't collect any of those snowflakes, so you're not going to have many smart bombs for you to use. And you'll have to be careful, as those whales that you can see, well, they have a habit of ducking under the surface. Now, as with any level of Fire and Ice, you'll have to use your ice pellets to freeze the enemies and then shatter them, as one of each type of baddie will contain a part of the key that you'll need to open the door. And they had to include the Yeti boss for you to deal with as well, and he will hide one of the parts of the key in him. But if you go off the beaten track, you might find a puppy that can help you deal with that beast. Now, this is a great demo for an absolutely great game, and I do like it when they do something unique. And at the complete opposite end of the platforming spectrum, we have Lethal Weapon, a demo that must be based on a complete or near enough complete game, as we have the title screen and then the mission select level, where we can switch between the two main characters from the film. And yes, this is a platformer based on the very adult rated film Lethal Weapon, so you can play as either Riggs or Murtaugh. But outside of that, well, the game plays very free and loose with its plot, or at least as much of it as I can remember, as the only level that we get to play here is set at the docks. And basically, you just have to walk around shooting everything that gets in your way. And if they aren't in our way just now, then they'll jump up to get in our way. The game features a quite brutal damage recoil that can easily send you flying into the water where the sharks will be ready to eat you up, or send you off the platform that you're standing on. This, as far as I can tell, is the entirety of the first level of the game. But there is a hidden timer that means you'll only get to play for a short while, which some people might not even notice, as this isn't the easiest game around, but it does look quite nice and it scrolls well. But you also have limited ammo and health, so you'll have to keep going around to try and find more of that, because if you don't, death will come quickly. Now, this demo would have gotten me interested in the final game, but to be honest, I'm not sure I ever managed to complete the full first level, so I'm not sure I've actually seen more than what this demo provides. And not getting too old for all of this is UK Amiga, that across its 2 discs provided 3 demos, a PD game and some tools, the first of which is Picture Box, an art program with a bit of a difference, as we have these 2 windows, the primary and secondary images, and you can load your pictures into each of them and switch them around. And while they might look black and white, this is just to try and make the program run a bit quicker, as what this wants to do is apply effects to those images. For example, we might want to blend the 2 together, and we can use the black as the transparency colour. And in doing that, we end up with a picture of a man's face with clouds behind them. Or we will eventually. This program isn't the fastest, so if you got the chance, run it on a more powerful Amiga. There is a version of it designed specifically for them, and you can then check out all the other options that it has. They also included the classic sysinfo. Now, this is looking very close to the versions that we see all the time when people are showing off how fast their Amiga is now. But you can tell it's not quite the same version as what we see these days, as it doesn't list the A1200 or A4000 in the relative machine speeds. They also included those same virus checkers that we've seen before, so let's check out something different, as they included a patch for Project X, and that adds in a cheat for this notoriously difficult game. But this will require overwriting your copy of the game, so it's not for the faint of heart to do. But if you're really stuck with this title, then this could have been very useful to do. The PD title is Galaga 92, a shooter based on Galaga, but it's not quite a clone, but it's more of an update on that classic game, as you'll get enemies flying in and taking formation and dive bombing you with bullets flying everywhere. And you'll start off with some very limited firepower, with only having 2 shots on screen at once. But as you start to take them out, they will drop icons. Some of these might speed you up, it might even double your fire, or increase the amount of bullets that you can have on screen at once. But this is still a very unforgiving game. And once you get taken out, those upgrades are gone. And as you progress through the levels, the enemies will become far more aggressive. Now, it's not doing anything too fancy, but I think this works really well as a cool little PD title. And I do like the vertical presentation, it's a nice touch. CU's first demo is for one that we've already seen before, Bill's Tomato Game, with what seems to be the exact same levels. But notice that in the HUD? Yes, the traffic lights and the attempts counter is here. So this must have been based on a more complete version of the game than we saw in the previous demo. So let's move on to the second demo, which is for BC Kid, also known as Bonk's Adventure. This is a port from the PC Engine game, and I think they did a great job. It looks nice and it plays well. You can collect the meat and grow larger, and then even invincible, and then headbutt your way through 3 levels that make up the demo, all of which are based on the first few levels of the game. Now, these aren't particularly difficult, and you'll pretty much be able to finish them off on your first attempt, so it won't take long for you to finish the demo, but it is a decent conversion, and I think this demo shows it off quite well. The final demo for CU Amiga? Well, it's a rolling demo for possibly the most anticipated game of the year, Street Fighter 2. And yes, there is no audio. But then I guess something had to go so they could fit 2 fighters and a stage on a single disc, as well as the other demo. And while it looks like it's random, it will pick the same 2 fighters and stage each time it runs, and then they will fight for your entertainment. And as far as I can tell, I think it might actually be the AI battling against each other, as I have seen a few different fights. But what this does show is, well, yes, it's a bit slow, and not exactly the best looking version of Street Fighter 2. What it doesn't show is the controls, which was limited to 2 buttons at most, and it came on 4 discs, requiring a lot of swapping to play. But if you had no other version of the game, then this wasn't the worst thing. I did play it quite a bit back in the day, and to be honest, I think this demo shows off this game at its best. The final magazine for the month is the one For Amiga, that had 5 demos over its 2 discs, and the first one is another demo for Street Fighter 2, and we get different characters as well as a different stage, but we still just get to sit and watch it play itself. So let's move on to McDonaldland, the second platformer where you get to pick between 2 different characters. But it is the only one that has evil staring you in the face. Yes, that clown will stay there the entire game in the corner. Ugh. The basics of the game is that you have to explore the levels to find the exit. But while doing so, you should be on the lookout for cards. Now, these aren't required to open up the exit, but they are required to complete the world, and once you gather enough of them, you'll have to give them back to the clown. The gameplay is of the Mario 2 Titus the Fox style, where you'll have to pick up blocks to throw at the baddies. But there are a few special ones that you can use to place in gaps to turn into floating blocks. But the game does feel a little bit sluggish. It's not quite as smooth as other platformers on the Amiga, but it's not the worst I've ever played. And the demo itself is generous with the number of levels that you get to explore in, even if it is just based on the first few of the game. So overall, it's not wowing me. It feels a little bit average, but it's not the worst. Oh, and is it just me? Or is that the same jump sound from James Pond 2? And look who's back. Yes, it's Sensible Soccer again. But this is the 1.1 update, also known as the European Champions Edition. This brought a number of changes to the base game, including adding red and yellow cards, as well as being able to pass back to the goalie. Or at least that's what it tells me you can do, as I have no clue otherwise. Much like the other Sensible Soccer demos, it's all over and done with when a team scores a single goal. And yes, we all know that's going to be the AI, don't we? I know that this is a favourite amongst the Amiga gamers, but no matter how many times I've played it, and we've played it a lot on Cover This Face Off, it will never be close to being my favourite game. We get a small demo next for Creatures. And we have seen this one before. But there we got to play the two different modes of the game, and here we just have the so-called torture room. Now this is a puzzle box, where we have to stop our mate from being killed by the weird machine. Now this isn't the most complex of things, but you will have to fight with the controls a little, as you'll have to learn how to blow fire, and then realise you have to act fast if you want to save your little mate. And this means we're up to the final demo, and it's for No Second Prize, a 3D bike racing game. That is very impressive when running on an A500, as just look at this lovely intro sequence. I was half tempted just to show you this and just leave it at that. As, well, I'm not the best at this game, but jumping into it we find that we can run a practice mode and select between a number of different races. There's even a number of tracks that you can choose from. But to play this you use the mouse, which might sound weird, and to be honest it is a little bit, but it does allow for analog steering, which is quite important for this type of game. Now you'll use the mouse buttons to brake and accelerate in that order, but as we can see when we're in here, the game still runs really nicely, and you'll get to see those nice detailed bikes that will pass you. I'm more about the arcade simpler racing games, and something like this is far more complicated than I'm used to, but I can admit that this is a very, very impressive looking game and a really nicely done demo. And with that, we have another month all wrapped up. Now don't go regifting it, please. Now let's see which 3 games I might have gone out and bought with my Christmas and birthday money. And in third place, I'm going to give it to Cytron. I'm not sure I fully understand the game, but it has a distinctive look and some interesting gameplay ideas. In second place, Fire and Ice. This is a charming game that I reviewed in the past, and it was a lovely demo. So in first place, I'm going to give it to Bill's Tomato Game. I do enjoy those physics puzzle games, and this was a great early example. even if they have overloaded it a little bit with too many ways to fail. I hope that you enjoyed the last episode of 2024, and there'll be much more to come in 2025. And if you had any of these magazines or have anything to say about my rankings, then you know you can tell me in the comments. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was 12 months of cover disc action, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, then there are a few years worth of videos in the playlist that you'll find linked on the screen. And while you're considering that, then you could check out the like and subscribe buttons, as it helps YouTube know that you enjoyed the video and it really helps out the smaller channels. So if any of that sounds good to you, then I hope to see you again soon.